Guys, it's Jessica. It is currently 2. I spent, the past hour trying to go back to sleep, kind of just giving up and decided that, I'm awake. Anyways, I am going to start filming my reading vlog for the Dark Romance Readathon. I'm going to start by reading Havoc, which Heather over at Hea Booktubes suggested. It's a reverse harem boy romance. I want to start by reading the author's note out loud. The author's note: chaos at Prescott High is a reverse harem high school enemies to lovers hate bully romance. What does that mean exactly? It means that our female main character, Bernadette Blackbird, will end up with at least 3 love interests by the end of the series. It also means that for a portion of this book, the love interests are total assholes. There will also be flashbacks of past incidents involving bullying. This book in no way condones bullying, nor does it romanticize it. If the love interests in this story want to win the main character over, they'll have to earn it. Might be hard though, considering the Havoc boys are dicks. If you've read my other 3 high school romance series, Rich Boys of Burberry, Devil's Day Party, or Addison All Boys Academy, which I haven't read, then just know this is a bit more intense. The characters' growth redemption are needed more than ever. Stick with it. It's fairly similar to I Was Born Ruined, the first book in my Death by Daybreak motorcycle club series. Any kissing, sexual scenes featured in Bernie are consensual. This book might be about high school students, but it is not what I would consider a young adult. The characters are brutal, the emotions real, the F word is prolific use. Oh, I'm excited! I love some F-bombs. There's the aftermath of suicide, mentions of past abuse, sexual situations, and other adult scenarios. None of these main characters are under the age of 17. This series will have a happy ending in the final. So I can see also why Heather over at Hea Booktubes loves this, because it is very upfront about what is in the book content-wise. So you can go ahead and judge for yourself if that's something that you're up for. Here at Chapter 1, the styling is great. The way this is formatted is so nice. It's kind of a weird thing to focus on, but when you are reading literally hundreds of books now a year and they're all on e-reader, you start to notice trends in what is stylish formatting wise and what you do or don't appreciate. So I do like this big chapter 1 heading. I like the gradient look. It is stylized without being over the top or silly. Sometimes they put little pictures or stuff in the chapters, and sometimes I like that, and sometimes I think it's a little childish. I feel like this is a happy medium. I am probably about to get directly into reading, no longer talking to camera. I don't know what microphone quality is going to be like with this vlog. I'm probably about to turn it off, and I'm probably not going to turn it back on when I want to have a discussion, so sorry if the audio is kind of weird after this. Chapter 1 starts with a 2 months earlier flashback scene. Why do people think that they have to start with a jumbled timeline? This line right here: because if she's called Havoc, then it means she has nothing left to lose. It means the butterfly I tried to set free no longer has wings. I can keep her, but she'll never fly again. Let's assume a butterfly could survive getting its wings pulled off. It's basically a caterpillar again, right? I'm just trying to picture the surviving bug and what's remaining of it, and whether or not it's a kindness to let them continue to survive, what's even left for a butterfly that can't fly. It implies that everything that makes somebody who they are has been stripped from them, and I'm just curious to see if that's an exaggeration or if our female lead is actually coming to Havoc, which is the acronym for these boys. The name, the first letter of each one of these boys' names spells Havoc. But anyways, I'm curious to see if coming to them is really an act of desperation that demonstrates that she's broken. If, like the butterfly metaphor, we're going to see some kind of caterpillar-butterfly transformation. Yeah, I also wonder if the focus here is on flying because people associate flying with freedom. But wings for a butterfly just mean more than that. It's pretty much everything that we notice about or think about when only think of butterflies as their wings. Nobody thinks about the middle part. As far as dealing with actual real-life butterflies, I really enjoy being in butterfly houses and seeing them flying around out in the wild. I always think it would be really cool to get them to land on me. And there's half a second where it is, and then I really look at the body of the butterfly, like the face and the eyes and the antenna, and I realize they're bugs, and I get really freaked out, and I just stay very still and want the butterfly to fly away. I just think this metaphor is interesting because it could relate to transformative properties, it could relate just to flying in freedom, it could relate to like everything in the world being stripped away from a person, and I'm curious to see like the depth of the author's ability to use metaphor. Maybe I should have gone down to the next line because it continues. Instead, if she wants to rule this world, she's going to have to do it by crawling on her belly like a snake. I don't like this metaphor as much. It's not as interesting to me, partially because I don't see snakes as lowly creatures or like bad creatures. I think it's supposed to imply humiliation or something unnatural, especially if we're seeing Bernadette as a butterfly, like a creature meant for the sky, and now she's grounded and not just stuck walking, but like literally slithering, as connected to the ground as you could be. It's a little bit of a mixed metaphor. I don't think it is as interesting or dynamic as the butterfly metaphor, although I do suppose that she extends the metaphor well. It continues with, I know about snakes, I'm one myself, a venomous motherfucker who knows where and when to strike and how to inflict the most damage. I think this gives snakes more of their due. They have a lot of efficiency of both motion and body type, just the style. That's what I specialize in now, inflicting damage and dispensing nightmares. I'm getting like a real pulpy noir vibe here, and I'm really enjoying that. It's going to take me a while to learn all these names and associate people with them. I'm hoping the boys have distinct personalities. Like right now, I'm looking at, I frown and lift my head up. Aaron is still staring at me, always fucking staring at me. He blames me for taking his goal. If you ask me, he should have fought harder if he wanted her so bad. So we've got Aaron, who apparently can't get over Specs. Cal, who feels they've wronged Bernadette in the past. We have Oscar, which is just a goofy name. I assume it's there so we can have Havoc. I don't know who is speaking to us first person. I almost feel like I should be taking notes. This is interesting. Don't do this, Victor, Aaron pleads, gritting his teeth, his hands curling into fists at his sides. I just keep smiling at him. If he wants Bernadette, he's going to have to fight harder than that. In a surprising move, he falls to his knees and puts his hands together in a prayer-like position. The move pleases me far more than it should. I must be wicked. Is this foreshadowing that this guy and Victor are also going to hook up? Where are we going with this? I'm about to skip ahead. I'm enjoying some of the pulpy atmospheric elements going on, but I already know that they do decide to make Bernadette their girl. There would be no series if that didn't happen. It's great writing. I'm enjoying it. I just don't see any point to this scene. If I were editing the book, I'd probably recommend trimming it or maybe even getting rid of it entirely. Okay, so I've skipped ahead and now we're at Bernadette Blackbird's perspective. And the first line here is there are two sides to every story, but usually only one of them is true. Agree to disagree. There are two sides to every story, and both of them are usually partially true. Thanks, though, for trying. Please play again. I like the name Havoc Girl a lot. It is making me smile. This is quite the flash forward. Like, we're at a post-fight scene. There's not just blood. Aaron apparently is bleeding with a bullet in his arm. This scene is getting more and more intense as I'm reading, and it just wasn't set up like that. It was set up like angry dad confronting his daughter. And then it was like a scummy, angry stepdad confronting his daughter. Then it was like a scummy, angry stepdad and a sketchy principal confronting his daughter. And it started making me wonder where we are. But it seems like all the Havoc boys are here too. And whatever happened was intense. Bullets were flying at some point in time, and Aaron has been shot. Does Aaron have children or younger sisters? The story is throwing you right in the deep end, guys. I like it, but it's also maybe too much for my sleep-deprived brain. I am getting a hard time establishing how many people there are here. It seems like there is Principal Vaughn, Neil, some kind of police officer, sheriff, Holly, who may or may not be his girl, and then there is a fourth separate character called the Thing. 4 people? Question mark? Don't know. Also, it does seem like the girl's errand is referring to our literal children that were supposed to be babysat. So I'm assuming that they are siblings. I think the Thing is Neil. See, this swapping back and forth like this when we haven't established who these characters are to each other is a lot to take in the first couple of pages. There's nothing wrong with nicknames, but if you haven't established people enough, keep the names the same for a little bit while I sort of learn who they are to each other. I do appreciate that the names all start with different letters and don't look that similar. It is helping my dyslexicness quite a bit to not have to deal with very similar looking.
I got about 5% into the Havoc book before I started getting sleepy, and the whole time I couldn't help but think that there was something wrong. It turns out that I was reading the second book in that series. All of my sort of like drowsy comments about, hey, this really threw me into the middle of it, I was right. But here we are, we're starting all over in chapter 1 in Havoc. This time, this is really and truly the first book. I read just a little bit of this to establish it, and it's got like the Havoc boys, and it explains that they're the Havoc boys, and it also is explaining a little bit about the settings. I still think Oscar is a terrible name, and it should be Onyx. Last time I did a reading vlog where I just recorded me reading. It wasn't very interesting. It actually has pretty good views, but like I didn't do anything interesting, so it probably makes more sense for me just to read and update you guys as necessary. Y'all, this line in chapter 2 is hilarious to me. It says right here, Miss Keaton is only 32, but she looks 50. Oh, I'm feeling some kind of way about that. I am older than Miss Keaton. I hope I don't look 50. I know it's not directed towards me, but it's just funny. Picky grammar thing, but Havoc, when it's an acronym, should always be all full caps. And it's just a capital H and all the other letters in the acronym were lowercase. And I know she did this because if she had capital Havoc everywhere, it probably would look weird on the page and in the manuscript. The thing is, it ticks me off mostly because in my technical editing life, I spend a lot of time correcting acronyms and correcting capitalizations and whatnot. Little grammar thing, but we're 4% in 3 chapters, and I'm already a little annoyed about it. So we'll see how it goes going forward. It's not enough to make me put a book down. If you just wanted a fun Easter egg, and it just so happens that their name also spells Havoc, which is the name of their gang, and then you could have capitalized just the H. I don't know why you felt the need to show that it was an acronym, and then also show that you were never going to use it as an acronym. I just wanted to give everyone an update on the Dark Romance Readathon. I sort of utterly failed both at completing the readathon and at blogging it. By end of day Monday, I had just managed to finish the first book, Havoc, and start in on the second book. I'm checking in with you guys now more about my progress in the Prescott High School book than I am in the overall journey as a readathon. I was so focused on getting through Havoc, reading that book, and experiencing it from like a dark romance, pulpy noir sort of perspective that I kind of lost sight about whether or not I was enjoying the book or whether or not this is a book that I wanted to keep reading. And I kind of kept pushing myself all the rest of this week, since it's now a week after the Dark Romance Readathon has finished. And you guys probably won't see this. Maybe if I'm lucky, you'll see it this week. But editing wise and cue wise, you'll probably end up seeing this next week. I want to give a couple reflections on Havoc and the series as a total. As it stands right now, I'm about 25% through book 4, and I'm going to DNF it. This series didn't really have what I was looking for in a bully romance. The characters have bullied Bernie way back 2 years prior, and they did it because they loved her. And I don't really enjoy that. I would have enjoyed like a true enemies to lovers story, or I would have enjoyed a story where the boys had intense emotions that they hadn't quite figured out. They lashed out because they have fucked up home lives and they don't really know how to express themselves or figure out their feelings. And then 2 years later, when they have an opportunity to get closer to Bernadette, they do, and they realize that actually this whole time the strong emotions were like passion. That's the kind of bully romance I'm looking for. But it's not what is going on in that Prescott High series. The other thing is I'm not sure I liked how some of the dark themes were handled. There is a lot of mentions of page assault, and I liked the intensity of the gangs, and I was willing to suspend my disbelief about high schoolers being this gang oriented because since they were in high school, they didn't have to have real jobs or like pay taxes, and they got a little bit of leniency with the cops, which sort of smoothed some other things along. So I was willing to like overlook some of that lack of realism. But the actual mentions of like assault, abuse, violence, how these characters deal with this trauma in their life, how they interact with each other. It's not so much that I couldn't relate or that it was unrealistic. I suppose these were all realistic enough responses. It's just that it wasn't satisfying to read. For me, some of bully romance is self-discovery and then that hurt comfort aspect. And that's not really what's going on in these stories. I thought there was like a really strong premise for it because Bernadette has a list of like 7 people she wants Havoc to take care of. And I thought as we would go through those 7 people, we would slowly go through different areas of trauma, and she would like work through those emotions, how the Havoc boys did or didn't play into that. Maybe we'd have some follow-up conversations, and we're just not getting any of that, or at least we're not getting it in a way that's meaningful to me. That's why I'm putting the book down. It is really well written. I don't think that the author went as pulpy or dark or metaphoric as I would have liked, and there are times where she is leading the reader. Like there's one line in book 4 that's like, I will always be bleeding, period. Physically and metaphorically. I didn't mean the physically and metaphorically, just made that line so much less powerful by including it. And she does stuff like this throughout the entirety of the novel. I was expecting the boys to really like work for Bernadette, and I sort of thought in the first book where they went so long before they hooked up that we were going to see some of that working. It's not happening in a way that's satisfying for me. I won't say it's not happening at all because certainly there's a lot going on. The author's done a pretty good job balancing multiple threats and making them interconnect in a way that is satisfying enough. I do feel there's a couple elements, without getting into spoilers, that aren't quite pulling their weight. Some of that for me is just because I pick apart so many plots. I read so many different kinds of plots and whodunit and mysteries and subtle things that I can tell when things aren't fully pulling together. In this case, there's several characters that she uses to connect and bridge multiple threats that seem separate but are actually all just like one mega threat. And the characters she uses to bridge just don't fit entirely. And one last thing about this Havoc series before I move on with this. Book 4 mentions COVID-19 several times, like they have already gone past the point of COVID-19 and they're over it. And I didn't like that little bit of reality coming into what I had thought of as like a fluffy high school gang war kind of book. You know, I've accepted that we're in a gang war world with high schoolers happening in Oregon. And now you're trying to draw me back into the real world. I've even accepted that we live in a gang world in Oregon where everything is still stuck in the 90s. You know how hard that was for me to let all those things go, and now you've brought COVID into it, and I have to overcome that too. Please don't do that, books. If you're asking me to suspend a lot of disbelief on something that's supposed to be happening in our world, do not bring in current topics like presidential politics or global pandemics and expect me to roll with them. That's just too much. Especially if you think maybe the thing you're bringing into the book is the thing that I'm reading to sort of like get a break from. I mean, if I wanted to read something COVID-19 related, there are plenty of news articles. Or if I wanted to read a book that like incorporated COVID-19, it wouldn't be this kind of story. So, you know, just do yourself a favor and don't bring that into your writing. Yeah, so that's going to be the end of my Dark Romance Readathon. I guess by the end of Monday, I had finished reading one book, and I guess it probably had hit a lot of the prompts because there's quite a bit of violence in these books. And that's my overall review for the Havoc series. I'm going to stop here at book 4. It's a shame because I really wanted to finish at least until we got to the point where Oscar's relationship was further developed. I still think Oscar would have made a better Onyx than Oscar, but I'm just like too annoyed with these books, and I've got so many that look really good. I'm ready to move on. This has been an interesting experiment to do a reading vlog. I have a lot to learn when it comes to doing some of these impromptu reading vlogs. Like, am I supposed to have the camera on and you're supposed to watch me read? Is that supposed to be interesting? Or am I supposed to turn the camera on and off and just bring up when I have a comment or something to mention? I'm still figuring that out. I'm not even sure if it's like a good format for me or not. I could really use some feedback. The other reading vlog I've done is Glean, and I'm going to put it up here. That did really well for my channel. channel, but I think some of the reason it did really well is because Gleam by Raven Kennedy is the third book in a Plated Prisoner series that does pretty well. And I think people were just looking for Gleam content in general, and it wasn't necessarily the blog format that was doing me any favors. The other thing I think I learned from this, I'm reading a book and I have very limited reactions. That's not going to be a good reading blog book. Like, I need one that's going to be off the walls, bonkers, one that I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, so you guys, let me know in the comments down below, was this a successful reading blog? Is this the kind of thing you're looking for from a reading blog? Thank you for watching, and as always, keep reading. Bye!